the cause of dues. And when you involve an interpreter, which is what we did, you also get more input, you know, about the cultural kinds of things. So we were involved with asking the interpreter if these kinds of behaviors were typical of children in that culture. We also worked very well with Mrs. Sawanarat, who's the interpreter. And with different interpreters, you get different kinds of assessments. Every interpreter is not good, for instance, with little children. There's some interpreters who are strict. There are people from certain cultures who think that if children do certain things in a testing situation that they should be scolded, which is exactly what I would not do. So working with interpreters is also a very special part of working with particularly with DU and with other children who are like that.
One of the strategies that people normally gravitate to is to use an interpreter during their evaluation. And that's a good strategy, and it may be the only strategy in a lot of situations. It's the best that you can do, then that's what you have to do. But the problem with that is that it's very difficult. There's a difference between interpreting and a direct translation. A lot of things cannot be directly translated, and so that's a problem. And you also have the issue of that person is now a filter to giving the question and to whatever response they get back. Another good resource would be to find people who are cultural brokers. And what cultural brokers can do for you is they're not necessarily people who are going to serve as your interpreters, but they can give you insight into what is common within a culture. Or what children are normally like, or what's expected of a 7-year-old in this community, because that person is part of that community. Or they can share with you what body language should be like or shouldn't be like, or how you show approval or disapproval. And so you want to seek out people in the community that, again, have information or can share with you.
Her main concern is language development in the community.
It's very important information you get when you do a home visit. And for DU, I think the testing her in the home was very appropriate. She was more relaxed. She gave me, I think, more responses than I got at school. And so I got to see her in 2 different settings. But another helpful thing about it was her mother was able to see me when I evaluated her at home. And that's important information for the parent. That's part of the parent building that we like to do when we're working with families.
Can you show Mommy how you write DU?
Mommy,
D.
In writing a good psychological report, I think it's always important to make sure that you capture the child's strengths as well as the child's weaknesses. When the psychologist tests, there's usually always some kind of problem that someone has identified.
Every single test that you give, every single item gives you some piece of information. It doesn't necessarily have to translate into a score. And so you want to share, you know, how that person did on these things. You also want to talk about any experiences that were traumatic or anything that somehow affects the responses that you're getting. If you get a picture or something of war, and, you know, is it coming from something they saw on television or is it coming from an experience that they had? That's where, again, all your history is important. You have to get away from the frame of mind that it's one thing. It most likely is several things, not just one thing. But it shouldn't keep you from then addressing the problem.
Goes over the water.
what?
And we're going to send this form around that essentially goes with the basis for a committee decision that says that we found DU eligible. It is very important for the psychologist to work carefully with the teacher. No matter what I'm seeing, I have to understand that the teacher has the child, 4 to 6 hours a day. And so I have to be very cognizant of what's going on with them, how they're feeling about the child. So I depend very much on the teachers to give me information about what's going on when I can't be there. In this case, I work very carefully with Danielle, rely on her heavily. She does excellent observations herself. We talk in the hall, we talk at other times, and we set up meetings together. So it's critical, again, for us to be a multidisciplinary team. And we'll have an IEP to discuss her programming for the end of the preschool year. And then
DU's case, like many faced by schools today, presents the challenges of working with a multilingual and multicultural family. A comprehensive reevaluation was completed in order to plan for Du's educational needs as she transitioned from preschool to kindergarten. The team determined that Du was eligible for continued special education services in a placement for kindergarten students.
I think she can do a lot of things. It may not be the same things that the other children in her school are doing, but from where she started off when she started in the program at 2.5, I think she has a lot of potential, and I think she'll do a lot more than people expect of her, because she's doing that already.
A wide variety of sources were used to assess Du, including conducting multiple observations in school and in the natural setting at home, using an interpreter and cultural broker, interviewing parents regarding medical and family history, comparing Du's performance to that of other English language learners in the same cultural and linguistic group, conducting a dual language assessment to determine proficiency in English and Thai, reviewing Du's ongoing response to her special education preschool program, utilizing alternate and authentic assessment techniques such as the test-teach-test strategy and performance-based assessment, using formal verbal and nonverbal psychological tests, as well as speech-language and educational test measures. But because of the limitations and potential bias of standardized tests with culturally and linguistically diverse learners, the team primarily used these measures to derive descriptive diagnostic information. The parents and team were pleased with Du's continued academic and social growth, and were optimistic on the future outcomes for Du.
Basically, today we're going to talk about how we work as a team when children are having difficulties and what steps we take to help them be successful.
A set of norms of behavior. That's how I see culture. And this is something that we need to take into account when we're looking at kids and families from other cultures, because what's acceptable here is not acceptable there.
Joel was a child enrolled in English as a second language classes in 2nd grade. Teachers observed that Joel was not meeting the grade level standards and that he had difficulty with organization and attention in class. A number of pre-referral interventions were implemented, including teacher consultation with the in-school problem-solving team, as well as support from the reading specialist and Title I teacher. After meeting with the parents, the child study team referred Joel for a dual language assessment to determine his language proficiency in English and in Spanish. Despite these initial steps, Joel's progress was insufficient, and the team decided to refer Joel for a special education evaluation.
He's not performing in the classroom, even though he has all of the skills.
The testing showed us that he is not only very comfortable in English, he is really a very bright child of high average intelligence, and there was no evidence of any learning deficits. So the testing tells us that he doesn't need support through special education. It also supports the parents' belief that Joel doesn't need to be in ESL classes, that he can hold his own in a regular program.
Then the fears subsided, but they were there.
He's going to be pulled out of the ESL class, and what's going to happen now with Joel is that I'm going to work with the classroom teacher in terms of some strategies to help him with organization, which is what he's lacking, and attention issues. We're going to monitor him that way for a while, and then if he's not showing the progress that we now know he should be showing, then we may revisit the attention issue. But we have ruled out the special education route for him.
As a result of a comprehensive screening and evaluation process, the child study team determined that Joel did not qualify for special education services. The data showed Joel to be a bright, English-dominant student with high average cognitive and academic skills. The team reviewed many sources of data including parent interviews, educational history, classroom observations, level of language proficiency, standardized test results, and response to specialized interventions from the Reading and Title I teachers.